In sprinting, having a technically sound running form is in most cases a considerable benefit to an athlete's performance. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look through the athletes who I consider to have the best sprinting form and ranking them in order. As I go through the athletes' rankings, I'll give an analysis on the best aspects of their form, but I'll first give a brief outline as to why the practice of frontside mechanics is beneficial for sprinters, and why in this video it'll be one of the key factors that's considered when rating an athlete's form. A simple way to think of frontside mechanics is preventing your leg from spending time behind your body that isn't necessary, and using the motion of your legs in front of your body to help achieve this, as well as shorter ground contact times. The result of implementing this can be an athlete's leg cycle looking as if they're cycling an invisible bike. As we meet more key factors throughout the video, I'll explain them as we go, but for now we'll start off the list. At number 20 we have Joseph FAHNBULLEH. Since FAHNBULLEH has some of the most mesmerising form when running at top speed, I couldn't leave him off this list, and although his start is a weak point, the power he is able to generate with each foot strike when fully upright is incredible. His finishing form can look more impressive in the 200 meters, while he maintains his form as other athletes are slowing down and losing form. But for this video I'll be focusing solely on the 100 meter event. FAHNBULLEH does have elements of his race that he can continue to work on, but as far as getting the most out of your lower body strength, he is one of the best in the business. At number 19 we have BRACEY. In my video where I spoke about whether you can run fast with bad form, I pointed to BRACEY as an athlete who had both incredible natural talent by running 10:19 wind assisted within his first few races, while also noting that he ran with impressive form from day one. Since BRACEY naturally had a muscular build when he began sprinting, it helped lend structure to his form, whereas lighter athletes can tend to swing their arms and legs to varying positions with each stride when starting out. BRACEY has a slightly robotic look to his form, but it remains extremely consistent with very little flaws. At number 18 we have QUARRIE. QUARRIE won the silver medal in the 100 meters at the 1976 Olympics, where he ran his PB of 10.07. He was Jamaica's first top contending sprinter, and he laid the path for the excellence in Jamaican sprinting technique that we've seen in the 2000s. A trademark feature of QUARRIE's form was how he extended his leg out in front of him, which led to him having a very elegant looking leg cycle, while also maintaining a stable core, which set him apart from many of his competitors at the time. At number 17 we have FILLIPO TORTU. TORTU has a 100 meter personal best of 9.99, and what's most eye-catching about his technique is how strict his upper body form stays throughout his races. He has a very aesthetic arm swing where his arms move straight forward and back but remain completely symmetrical to each other without any flaring at the elbow or unnecessary shoulder movement. It almost looks as if his arms are on a hinge and can only swing through one plane of motion with no lateral movement. As for his lower body technique, he has no notable flaws, and his knees are typically close together upon each foot touchdown, which is considered to be the ideal model because it means both legs are in sync and your foot isn't landing too far in front or behind. When TORTU chased down Mitchell Blake to take the 4x1 relay gold at the Tokyo Olympics, the key difference was TORTU holding his form while Mitchell Blake didn't. At number 16 we have Francis Obikwelu. Obikwelu has a PB of 9.86 which he ran en route to a bronze medal at the 2004 Olympics, and possibly the most characteristic element of Obikwelu's form was his high knees, which he always held through the line. High knees by themselves are not a requirement to run to your absolute fastest potential, as it will depend on the individual athlete. But since Obikwelu was an athlete who put his emphasis on frontside mechanics, his high knees running form allowed him to get the most out of his stride, as he was always the tallest athlete in the field. At number 15 we have FREDERICKS. FREDERICKS was one of the most decorated sprinters of the 90s, finishing in second place in the 100 and 200 meter finals in the 1992 and 1996 Olympics. His style of running focused on maintaining a very straight back posture, keeping his legs out in front of him with his distinctive femur action, as his legs appeared to pump straight up and down. If I had to describe an athlete as having form that resembled cycling a bike, FREDERICKS would be among the first to come to mind. At number 14 we have DARRELL. Brown was a former world junior record holder and silver medalist at the 2003 World Championship with a career personal best of 9.99. When we watch Brown here leading the race, we can see he has an extremely relaxed style of running, and his core, neck and head remain stable while he maintains a measured arm swing, not adding any extra wasted motion with his arms or legs. When we compare him to the athlete in lane 1, whose legs are spending too much time behind his body, with his heels getting stopped behind his backside, there's a night and day difference between them. At number 13 we have Noah Lyles. If I was to make this list for the best form in the 200 meters, Noah Lyles would undoubtedly be higher, but with his ever evolving race execution in the 100 meters, I feel this ranking is a fair place for him. When Lyles ran his personal best of 9.86 in 2019, his strategy in the acceleration phase was to take short choppy steps to get his foot back onto the ground as quickly as possible. In 2023, Lyles has made a conscious effort to take full length steps coming out of the blocks, and it paid off for him in the 60 meters as he hit a new PB of 6.51 earlier this season. While taking full steps can feel more cumbersome for athletes who aren't the sharpest out of the blocks, it allows for them to better build momentum as the race goes on, and Carl Lewis has likened it to pushing a car to get it started. As you take full steps, the steps gradually get faster. When Lyles is running at top speed, we see him flow in an effortless looking fashion, and one of my favourite bits of sprinting footage is where he overtakes Christian Coleman just before the line in Shanghai, and it almost looks as if Lyles is running in one spot while everyone around him is flying backwards. Lyles has a very upright body and steady core and almost looks like something out of the Matrix as he flies through the finish line with little to no deceleration. At number 12 we have Tyson Gay. Many of the athletes featured in this video are so close in terms of being at the upper echelon of sprinting that there's barely anything to choose between their placing on this list. Tyson Gay was an athlete who had weak aspects to his race, but the strongest aspects of his races were so immense that it's hard to diminish his races as a whole. Tyson didn't have the strongest of starts, but he did exert a lot of energy trying to explode out of the blocks with a large range of motion arm swing. His torso and head stayed incredibly straight when he was running upright, and his form at times looked tense, but because he had such a quick turnover with his legs and rapid arm swing, he was the kind of athlete who looked like he was running all out, even if he was just running at 85% of max effort. At number 11 we have Yohan Blake. While nothing about Blake's form particularly stands out from an aesthetics perspective, he doesn't have any notable flaws that can be pointed to either. Blake was able to stay relaxed right through the finish line, which showed on his face as he almost never tensed up or over pushed once he had reached his top speed. In contrast to Tyson Gay, Blake ran with a slight forward lean in his torso, something that his former coach Glenn Mills preaches so that the athlete stays in front of their centre of gravity. At number 10 we have Carl Lewis. Carl Lewis's race execution was seen as groundbreaking during the 80s as he maintained his speed better than anyone he competed against. Compared to other athletes in the top 10 of this list, he has the biggest flaws within his form, which were the angles he came out of the blocks at and lack of torso stability, but when it comes to running upright at top speed, few athletes had a more graceful sprint form than Carl Lewis. Lewis had an exceptional knee lift, bringing his femur near parallel to the ground, while also extending his elbow all the way back, which led to some iconic looking still shots from his races. Lewis was coached with the philosophy to never over push in an attempt to sprint faster, which kept him running loose, and he never cut his stride short, so each step got quicker as he picked up speed. At number 9 we have Ronnie Baker. Ronnie Baker currently stands as the 15th fastest 100 meter sprinter ever with his PB of 9.83, and he has an excellent start which ticks all the boxes from a technical standpoint, which helped him become the second fastest 60 meter sprinter in history. Baker also has an above average knee lift, which leads to an aesthetic looking leg cycle, as he is one of the main athletes today using great frontside mechanics. At number 8 we have Trayvon Bromell. Bromell has long been one of the fastest starters in the 100 meters and pretty much has a textbook start along with great form at top speed. When Bromell runs, his legs and arms don't flare out to the side since he keeps his arms by his side while driving his legs straight in front, something that many athletes can struggle with either due to their physical structure or their race plan to take staggered steps out of the blocks. At number 7 we have Dennis Mitchell. Dennis Mitchell is sometimes overlooked when talking about the great sprinters of the 90s, but he did take bronze in the 91 World Champs, running his PB of 9.91. He ran with an elegant style, extending his leg out in front of his body, but kept his foot landing under his centre of mass. Mitchell kept his hips high while running, which is beneficial since allowing your hips to drop can hurt your speed. From an aesthetic point of view, Mitchell's form is right up there with the very best. At number 6 we have Ben Johnson. Despite Carl Lewis generally being seen as having the most aesthetic form of his era, Ben Johnson was implementing a technique that was ahead of his competitors at the time. When Johnson ran, his core looked extremely stable, and you can see just his arms and legs moving in sync, while his torso remained stable, which is a testament to how well he used the strength that he had. When his foot hit the ground, his knees were together and everything looks vertically well aligned. Johnson's start was unorthodox, but it allowed him to put the rest of the field under pressure by instantly taking the lead, so even if he decelerated a bit towards the end of his races, his race strategy still paid off for him. As I mentioned earlier, there's little to choose between the form of the athletes up to this point, but as I entered the top 5, I'm going to say that these athletes are the clear top 5 and at their best they fully warrant their given ranking. In 5th place we have Justin Gatlin. Justin Gatlin had a distinct looking start and acceleration phase, as he would often keep his head and shoulders pointing right downwards into the track before becoming upright. Gatlin was able to keep his leg extremely straight and stiff upon landing, leading to greater power output, keeping his knees together when his foot landed. He would tend to keep his toes pointing upwards to activate ankle dorsiflexion, and he had a very clean arm swing that I would liken to FILLIPO TORTU. Gatlin was naturally a long strider, and he often ran with a forward chest lean, so he did run the risk of overstriding on a rare occasion, but when he didn't make mistakes, he ran like a machine, and was even referred to as an android by American teammates when he first came onto the scene, because he could run so fast without it taking a toll on his body. In 4th place we have Maurice Greene. Maurice Greene was one of the most consistent sprinters we've seen in terms of executing his race pattern the same way every time. After exiting the blocks, he very gradually came upright, and his long drive phase allowed him to accelerate gradually so that he delayed using all of his energy until later in the race. This efficient use of energy meant Greene was both one of the best starters and best finishers, and really had no weak aspects to his race, which allowed him to break the world record. Nothing about Greene's form strayed away from the way it was meant to be, and he had an aesthetic and compact arm swing and powerful foot strike. In 3rd place we have Usain Bolt. Despite a narrative being made around Bolt that he had bad form, I think that the running form he was capable of while at his best outweighed the limitations he faced because of how he was built. The first misconception about Bolt is that he had a bad start, but when we take a look at his fastest 30-meter split, it is only fractions behind the fastest starts ever. Despite his height, Bolt was actually able to achieve the angles necessary for optimal block clearance, which is a testament to the skill he developed from correct and repetitive practice. Bolt was taking information from one of the world's best sprint coaches, Glenn Mills, so when he began running the 100 meters at 21 years old, he hadn't accumulated any bad habits when it came to exiting the blocks and getting upright. So his transition into upright running throughout his drive phase was about as effective as it could be. Bolt may not have always been consistent with how fast he was able to start, but his execution has generally been the same, which led him to always being in touch by the time he got to fully upright running, where he could take advantage of his large stride and incredible top end speed. The most impressive part of Bolt's sprint action was his leg cycle, because he had a high knee lift and great hip extension, which allowed him to get the absolute most out of his stride length with each cycle. Bolt had some swinging of his upper body that came as a result of scoliosis and having one leg shorter than the other, since he had longer ground contact times on one side to compensate, but he showed this was only a minor issue aesthetically given the times he still ran. In 2nd place we have Marcel Jacobs. Marcel Jacobs is an athlete who was unable to run sub 10 seconds into his mid-20s until he mastered his form to develop one of the best running techniques we've ever seen. In the final of the Tokyo Olympics, Jacobs hit his top speed later than anyone else in the race because of his patient and gradual acceleration, which allowed him to overtake everyone past 80 meters, hitting the highest speed of the race of 43.3 kilometers. Jacobs' coach Paolo Camasi, who has a background in the triple jump, uses some unconventional but effective methods of training to give Jacobs an advantage. He has done extensive work to ensure his arms and legs move fluidly and in sync, and has also mastered the ability to relax, which prevents him from over pushing. Jacob's leg cycle and knee lift is exceptional, but the only mark against him is that so far he's only managed to run a fast and technically ideal race twice, with his 9.84 and 9.80 in the Tokyo Olympics. Before we reveal the athlete in first place, I want to acknowledge some more athletes for their sprinting form with honourable mentions. The other athletes are Valerie Borzov, Ada Bolden, Armin Harry and Jesse Owens. How would you rank the athletes on this list, and do you feel anyone else deserved a mention? Please leave your thoughts in the comments. The athlete who I think has the best form ever and deserves to be top of this list is ASAFA Powell. Powell has ran by far the most sub 10 second 100 meter races of any athlete in history, and his form is the main factor responsible for this. Not only did Powell achieve perfect angles when coming out of the blocks, but he also kept his arms and legs moving directly forward with no sideways deviation, which is in part due to his physical structure. Powell was a master of the drive phase and often buried the field by 40 meters, which allowed him to focus on maintaining perfect technique execution for the rest of the race. He also had a very tapered build and just the right amount of muscle to keep his form looking fixed and steady, but he wasn't too built that it would limit his range of motion. Powell ran his fastest races when he was able to stay relaxed the whole way through the line, and he was an expert at applying short but powerful contacts to the ground that looked like his legs were driving straight down in a stomping motion with each step. In an upcoming video, I'll take a more in-depth look at ASAFA Powell's career progression and ask how exactly he managed to develop his speed the way he did, and I'll also have a video ranking the best female sprinting form coming soon, so please be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more.